Hi, my name is Flora, and I want to share with you how I went from feeling depression, loneliness, hurt, pain, anger, bitterness, to feeling love, joy, happiness, and most of all, inner peace, both mentally and emotionally. The road that took me to this point started about a year ago when events happened in my life that pushed me to a place of such unhappiness that one could say I hit rock bottom. Although I feel like I've hit rock bottom before, but this one time really did it. I was so sad, I was so unhappy that I couldn't stop questioning what is the purpose of this? Why am I in this life? Is this what I came to do, to suffer? I mean, seriously, this is not good. I live my everyday so unhappy. I called it my own personal nightmare, I was in a black hole that I felt I could never get out of. My everyday was surrounded by negative thoughts. I would get up in the morning, and the first thing on my mind was something terrible that had already happened. Get up, go through the emotions, get ready, and then nighttime would come. And now it's time to go to bed. And guess what? Yes, I was going to bed thinking about the horrible things that either had happened that day or had happened before in my lifetime. So I got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. I just couldn't emotionally keep going on like this. And I knew that the only way out was for me to do something about it. Call it change, call it whatever you want. But the process had to start. And one could say that I was finally pushed to the limit to where I had no other choice but to do it. So I did. And I have been on this journey now for over a year. And I tell you, everything I've learned, everything I've discovered, a lot of it really common sense, a lot of it really already stuff that we know, but stuff that I did not want to accept or realize, or maybe it wasn't so obvious at the time as it is now, after going through the process. Anyways, I want to share this with the world because thanks to so many people out there who put their stories, who talked about their own events, their own experiences, and then they share how they felt about it and how they saw it, it truly helped me look at things a little differently and be able to sometimes move from the place of anger that I was in, or things made a little more sense, like, oh, okay, now I get it. So because of that, because of all the help I've received with all the courageous people in social media that have shared their stories or part of their stories, I feel like this is my way to thank life, universe, God, the Trinity, Source, whatever you want to call it. I want to share my story because you never know. Maybe someone out there can relate to something I'm saying and it will help them in the process of healing themselves. So, with that in mind, I think the best way to start is by giving you a little background story about myself. So you get an idea where I was emotionally when I first started my healing journey. I was born in Guatemala. I come from a family of low income. We were raised, my siblings and I, very Catholic. By the time I was 11 years old, I had my oldest sibling had passed away. Most of my other siblings, actually all of my other siblings, were gone. And at this point, I had also suffered personal childhood traumas. I had been molested, not just by an adult, but one time by a 12-year-old girl that now I realize must have been going through quite a few issues and pains of her own. This events made me into a rather shy, quiet, introverted child. Very observant though. I always was watching people, how they treated each other in society as a whole, especially because I was sent to church every Sunday, and in church they were teaching me how, you gotta love your neighbor, and you gotta be kind, and you gotta be good, and you gotta be, a giver. And I wasn't seeing that in society, to be honest with you. So as a teenager, I grew up being jaded and bitter and angry. On top of that, I'm in high school, so all of my friends were talking about the different careers they wanted to do. Someone wanted to be a lawyer, someone wanted to be a doctor, someone wanted to be this, that, and here I am. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I was lost. It got to the point where I got this rash in my arms when I was 16 years old. It freaked me out. I didn't know what it was. Now I know it was stress. But at the time, not knowing what road to take was just, I was in a bad place. And on top of everything else that had happened in my life, I felt that those events had a lot to do with the reason why I didn't know what I wanted to do in the first place. So the only thing I knew at 16 I wanted was to learn how to speak, write, and read English perfectly. I wanted to learn this language so much, so bad. I was so inspired by the culture, I was so curious about this American society. I love the music, I love the movies, I love the clothing, the whole thing. It used to, excite me just to think, oh, they're so free, they're so this, they're so that, and I want to learn their language, and I want to go there, and maybe there I'll be happy, right? Maybe there I'll find what I'm supposed to do. So at 16 years old, I asked my parents' permission to move to this country, and I asked one of my older sisters who was already established here. She was here, legally and all that, if I could come and live with her. Obviously, she said yes, and I came to this country around 17 years old. Didn't speak the language, didn't know anybody, but I was very excited and anxious to start my life. I was very blessed in the fact that the same sister that was generous enough to allow me to come and live here with her, she helped me get my legal documentation in order. So by the time I was 20 years old, I was legally in this country. At this point, I'm taking all the free ESL classes I can take to learn English. I decided to take the GED test. I figured that would be the easiest way to go to college because I want to go to college, which I did. By the time I was 20 years old, I signed myself up for college classes. Mind you, I barely spoke the language, but I was so hungry and so ambitious, and I just wanted to learn so bad that I did really well. Everything was going great academically. Emotionally, though, not so much. I was a rather sad person. I did not feel loved. I did not feel whole. I felt lonely. And seeing my siblings with their partners, with their husbands, with their loved ones, I just wanted that. I wanted to find someone who would give me that love, who would see me and would tell me, oh, you're the best thing ever, and you're beautiful, and you're smart, and you are worth everything. And that, of course, brought me down a road that was not very beneficial to me, because in my hunger for love and to find someone to care for me the way I thought, people care when they're in love, all it did is bring me into relationships with folks that were not doing too well emotionally themselves. And now I realize I was attracting that because even though academically I was doing fantastic, emotionally I was miserable. So I hadn't dealt with all of my issues, I hadn't dealt with all my pains from childhood. So I brought all this with me, and I was attracting people who had issues themselves. Unfortunately, this just did not bode well for me, because in one of those relationships, I decided to move out of my sister's house. I had to go get a full-time job. I was working full-time. I was going to school full-time. And I was in this relationship where the other person wasn't doing well either, because I wasn't doing well. So we were feeding that negativity back and forth. And all that did is bring back all those childhood memories to the front. And I couldn't stop thinking about all that stuff. And I kept blaming all that to why my life was the way it was at that moment. So I dropped out of college. I started partying, trying to have a good time so I could forget all the bad stuff, which we know doesn't help. And got lost in the process, again. So ended up a couple of those bad relationships. Was lucky enough to meet someone who was kind and seemed to have emotional stability and purpose. And I thought, okay, this is it. This is the right person for me. And of course, I went in all excited. But the thing is this, folks, I was not emotionally well. And at this point, now I have extra baggage from previous relationships. So now I have that to add to all the other stuff. And of course, our relationship was not great. We had arguments, we had fights, we had issues, but a lot of it had to do with the fact that I was not in a good place. So it didn't really matter. But we stayed together. We started a family, and no matter how things were going, we tried our best. On my second pregnancy, I was 20 weeks along when we were told by our doctors that our baby was going to die. There was no surgery, there was no miracle, there was nothing that they could do to change that. The child was going to die at birth, no matter what we did. There was no cure, there was nothing. You can only imagine what this did to me. I was put in a emotional depression where for months and months and months I couldn't get out of bed. I cried and cried every day. Why, right? And that did not help with the loop I already had, that negative mental loop I already had. That just added to that, that added a little more to all those negative thoughts that I already had. That didn't help situations in the relationship either, So, but we're still going. A few years later, 3 family members within a 2-week period died. That was super hard to deal with as well. During that same time, my older sister was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. She fought the battle for about 3 years. And, again, not an easy thing to go through. I mean, to watch your loved one suffer like that, and to see them fighting, though. She was the best example of what a fighting person is, because she never gave up. to the last moment. She kept saying, that things would get better. That didn't help life, And then we have the everyday, you guys. Then the issues with family, the issues with, friends, the issues at work. I mean, that's another one, And sometimes we end up in these jobs that XYZ, you don't get along with folks, and issues can happen. And now you have an unhappy life at work too. So it just seemed like as the years went by, as my life was going, I got more negative and more negative and more negative. And the loop was so wide, right? I had so much to choose from in terms of negative thoughts that it was my everyday. I mean, I could literally fill a whole day with nothing but negativity and remembering all the bad moments have happened in my life. So about a year ago, when I thought, okay, things are pretty, bad. No, there were still more things that could come, and events happened that pushed me to a low emotional level, the one that pushes you to wonder, why am I here? What's the purpose of this? Do I truly believe that I was put on this earth to suffer? Is there no joy? Is there no happiness? And the worst part about it is that you do know that you're loved, right? By your family, your siblings, your friends, but the hole in there doesn't allow you to see that or to really understand it. It's like, yeah, I know they love me, but nobody loves me type thing, It's crazy how the mind works. So after being pushed to the limit, I just couldn't take it anymore, and I finally decided that enough is enough. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to do it. All I knew is that I could not keep getting hit emotionally anymore. I had to get out of this. Somehow, some way, I had to get out of this. So one day, during that awful period in my life, I was by myself, and I came outside, and I pretty much out loud said, help, please, someone help me. There has to be someone out there that can give me a guide, something, please tell me how I can get out of this negative hole that I live in, because I don't want to live here anymore. I cannot take it anymore. And my call, my cry for help, my prayer, whatever you want to call it, got answered. And it was answered in the form of a relative, a dear niece of mine. I was telling her about all the stuff, everything I was feeling, how I was in this emotional emptiness, and she said to me about a book that had been recommended to her. The book was in Spanish, and she had been told that, when you have traumas early in childhood, sometimes it's better if you listen to someone in Spanish, because, it would help you. Somehow it would help you better. And honestly, at this point, I'm like, I don't care. I'll listen to anything or anyone. I need help. I'll take whatever. I'm desperate. I want to get better. So she sent me the link, and never, ever, ever did I imagine that by clicking the link, my whole life would change forever, and in such a beautiful way. In such an amazing, incredible way. I never thought that I would finally be free of the pain, of the anger, of the bitterness, of this hate, the self-loathing alone. Oh my God. So, and that's when it all started for me, you guys. It started with an audiobook. I listened to it in 3 days. It's about 6 to 7 hours long. It's by Louise Hay. The name of the book is How to Heal Yourself, or something along these lines. I'll link it to this video. And in the book, she talks about how, you're feeling emotions of loneliness, of anger, of resentment, of this and that. And I'm thinking, yes, I'm feeling all this stuff, And then she talks a lot about, how these emotions are put into us as children, and how the main issue here is that we are not taught how to love ourselves. That's the main idea of her book, really, in a nutshell. That's what she talks about, is about self-love. And I knew I didn't love myself. I mean, I was very clear on that. I didn't like myself, actually. But it was what do you do? How do you get to self-love? How do you change that? And that is where she helped me. That was the thing that she gave me, the first step into that process. And the very first step is self-love. Now, we don't love ourselves. I didn't love myself. I knew this when I went in, and she even says it in the book. At this point, you don't love yourself, and that's okay. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna get up every morning and you're gonna tell yourself that you love yourself. I love me. And you know what? I didn't believe it the first day I said it. And she even says it, you're not gonna believe it when you first hear it. And it's true. I didn't believe it. I was like, okay, I love me. But I decided that, okay, I'm gonna do it. And then she says something in this book that really hit the nerve for me. And it was that as children, we are constantly repeated how, we are, or how to behave, or how to think, or what to do. It's repetition, right? Our parents repeat the same thing over and over and over again. And then church, you go to church I felt like every other Sunday, the sermon, excuse me, was the same. So repetition of the same ideas, the same stories. And then the same thing with school. You go to school, and what do? You have to do homework. And what is homework but repetition of what they taught you in class, right? And when you're little, it's repeating the A, the B, the C, the D, the alphabet. You have to memorize it. You have to memorize the tablets, for the math tablets, right? So she talks about this. She talks about, it took a lot of repetition for you to feel the way you feel. And I thought about that, and I'm like, well, she's right? Because I have spent my whole life repeating the same thoughts over and over and over and over again, to the point where I didn't really have to think hard. They just came. So when she says that you have to repeat to yourself every day, I love me, and that at some point you will start believing it, it's 100% true. I can tell you this from own experience. When I first started, I said, I love me. And that was it. I said it the one time. But then I started saying it more and more and more, and I started adding it. And I'm not gonna say that it was right away. No, it took a little time. It took remembering, I didn't say I love me. I have to say I love me today. But I started repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. And yeah, I started once a day, then twice a day, then 3 times a day. And now it's a mantra in my head. If I get upset, if something happens that I don't like, if I want to think of, or if something comes to mind that I don't want to think about, it's a mantra. I love me, I love me, I love me, I love me, I love me. And you know what? I started believing it after a while. I started believing this. I did love me. And you know when I really realized that this was working for me when someone once did something, and this was a few months later, and somebody did something, and I remember that although I did get upset, at some point I started saying, I love me, I love me, I love me, I love me, I love me. And that helped me for that particular event not to take root in my head. So that was the first step, folks. That was the first step towards my healing, was telling myself that I love me. Now that alone, it's not enough. I had to do a lot more work, and that I will be sharing with you guys in the future, in my future videos, of all the different stuff I have done to get to the point of inner peace and happiness and contentment and joy, because I am there. I am at peace. I am happy. I am joyful. I see life in a totally different way. I'm so much happier. And although the circumstances in my life have not been always the best, I can now look at it in a completely different light, and I can tell you that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because I got myself out of that negative place, and I can promise you I will never, ever, ever go back there again, because now I know better and I know how to do it. And it all starts with repetition. Repetition. Our whole lives, we've been told to learn stuff by repeating. I mean, that's what I had to do to learn how to speak, read, and write English. It's not like it was just by pure wishing. No, I had to literally repeat. I would write the same words over and over and over and over again. I would listen to people speak, and I would listen to the sounds. And then I had to go ahead and start practicing the way I spoke. And guess what? I learned another language through repetition, through doing it over and over and over again. And that's how I knew that the first step to this healing process for me was to start repeating. So I signed up myself to school again. But this is the school of healing, of self-healing. A place where now I can control. A place that now allows me to be in a better place in the world. I can enjoy life now. I can enjoy everything so much more. And I wish for everyone out there that is going through some heartaches, through some problems, through whatever, that the joy of finding inner peace, of finding inner love. Self-love is the most important thing you can do for yourself. Seriously. Nothing, no one out there can give it to you. It's a gift that can be given to yourself, and it can be done. Absolutely. So that was my first step. I started by listening to some audiobooks of self-help, and then I started by repeating, I love me. And guess what? I do. I love me so much. I love me so much now that it's so hard for someone to upset me. It really is, because I love me more than I love them. And that is something that has taken me quite a few years to figure out. But that now that I did, there's no going back for me. I'm only moving forward. There's no going back. So, with this, I think I'm gonna end this video. I am wishing you all so much self-love, joy, happiness, but above all, mental and emotional inner peace. I love you all. God bless. Until next time.